So Baldur's Gate 3 is finally out, and I, like many people, have been obsessing over it to an almost unhealthy degree. At some point, I want to do a deep dive into why this game is so important, why it is not only an impossible achievement and sets a new standard for RPGs going forward, but why it is in many ways generation-defining. But for now, I have something else on my mind. You could say it's an urge of sorts. A dark urge. Eh? You see what I did there? Do you get it? When it comes to a game this massive and with so many options, I see a lot of discussion online on what you should do for your first playthrough, with most people opting to ignore the customizable Dark Urge character for a completely blank slate one. Then comes the usual cadence of, well, I'm saving the Dark Urge for an evil playthrough. Well, in case you can't tell by the title of this video, I think you're doing yourself a disservice through this line of thinking. And I'm going to spend the first part of this video explaining why I think you should play the Dark Urge as your first playthrough, in the most spoiler-free way I can. The second part will be dedicated to breaking down and dissecting why I think the Dark Urge is maybe one of my favorite main character stories in a role-playing game. First off, I agree that customization is important when dealing with an RPG like this, which is why I will never tell you to play one of the companion origin characters for your first playthrough. But the Dark Urge allows you to still fully customize your character. The only difference between playing a blank slate character and the Dark Urge is your backstory will actually matter in the game, to a very large degree. Picking the acolyte or charlatan background is great and can lead to some interesting options and responses in the game, because this is Larian we're talking about. But playing through the game with such a background on my first playthrough made me feel like something was missing. All these characters I'm teaming up with have these really intriguing and deep backstories that flesh out the world and their stakes in the main story, beyond just having a mind flayer tadpole in their heads. What about me? Do I have anything beyond curing the tadpole that binds me to this world? Not really. A lot of the worry I see online is that people feel the Dark Urge is forced to be evil, and while I think the developers did themselves no favors in advertising it that way, I am here to tell you that the Dark Urge can be played in whatever way you choose. In fact, I think the painful story of a person who has no memory of their previous life, but struggles every moment to resist the darkness inside them, is incredibly more powerful than leaning into the axe-crazy psychopathic killer angle. A morally good playthrough of the Dark Urge can be a tragedy wrapped in a powerful and emotionally moving Shakespearean drama of a person who wants nothing more than to be normal. To not feel like a monster, even though they were in many ways created and encouraged to be one. It's a story of how no one is ever beyond saving. They just have to be willing to fight no matter how impossibly difficult it may be. You can, in fact, fight your own nature. And the way that theme slots so perfectly into the events of the main story is what makes the Dark Urge my canon playthrough. Playing the Dark Urge also slots your character and story directly into the events of the overarching narrative. You have a connection to the events and history of Faerun beyond just wanting to get rid of the tadpole. You now have two unwanted occupants in your head. Without spoiling too much, you also have a direct connection with the main antagonistic forces of the game. It's why I'm not surprised that Larian came out and said that the Dark Urge was originally supposed to just be the main character, but they decided to switch it to an origin character. Because it feels like the main character. Their story has stakes, personal demons, and the kind of development you usually only see in your companion characters. Those beautiful moments of self-growth and actualization that Astarion or Shadowheart can go through, shouldn't you be able to have that too? And this is something Larian has always excelled at from their very early days. Any company can make an RPG story with world-ending stakes and fantastic villains. But Larian's success can be attributed to their knack for making sweeping epics have personal and human stakes. It's why I think if you ever go back and play Divinity Original Sin 2, you should really do a Lohse playthrough. Unlike the origin characters for Baldur's Gate, Original Sin 2's characters can be fully customized. And like the Dark Urge, it feels like Lohse was supposed to be the main character. Not only is she a fan favorite, not only is her song so beloved and iconic that Larian chose to pay homage to it in Baldur's Gate,
dark, come to me, the night is long. Sing for me, I'll sing along. Sing for me, oh, sing for me. Sway
But Los's connection to the main conflict of the story feels really unique in a way that is radically different from the other origin characters, aside from maybe Fane. All of your companions are chosen by the gods for some holy mission, each companion being the chosen of a different god. Everyone, that is, except Losa. Original Sin 2's themes are in many ways the blueprint for Baldur's Gate. It was a story about self-actualization, defiance of fate, and finding your own path. Losa's struggle to excise a demon who seeks to control her life and plot her future slots perfectly into the themes of the larger story. It enhances and enriches them, making you feel like you control a character who has a personal stake in the story and has an arc alongside your other companions. What Losa was for Divinity, the Dark Urge is for Baldur's Gate 3. Or maybe I'm just a sucker for angsty characters with dark backstories. Playing the Dark Urge for your first playthrough may seem like you are limiting yourself and boxing yourself into a corner, but I promise you, the stuff you lose is negligible and the stuff you gain is invaluable. The Dark Urge can be so much more than a psychopathic killer set to leave a bloody trail through the Sword Coast. It can also be one of the most emotional and powerful redemption stories that I've ever seen told in a video game. So if you want to know nothing else besides why you should consider the Dirge for your first playthrough, well, there you go. I'm not going to be doing a deep dive analysis into the Dark Urge story, which, as you can imagine, is heavy with spoilers. So go away and play it, and then come back here. The thing that makes the Dark Urge stand out from other video game protagonists is, at their core, they are not a good person. They are, in fact, in every literal and metaphoric sense of the word, a monster. In a game based on a franchise where the entire goal and fantasy is to be a hero that slays monsters, that's almost radical. The Dark Urge is revealed in the late game to be a Baalspawn, a literal child of the god of murder, a boogeyman that the people of Baldur's Gate tell stories about to scare their children. Notably, this isn't the first time a Baalspawn has been made the hero of a story set in Faerun. Specifically, Gorian's ward, the protagonist of the first two Baldur's Gate games, was a Baalspawn.
Listen to me. I knew another like you, Gorian's ward, one of Baldur's Gate's great heroes. Baal's blood ran through their veins too. They burned away their own darkness with their own inner light. They chose courage. They chose honor. And so can you.
Now, I can't personally speak to the specifics of how Gorian's ward was depicted, as I have not played the other Baldur's Gate games. I do plan on doing so in the future, so I might come back here for a follow-up to this video when I do. Speaking just from the context we are given, though, it seems Gorian's ward was ultimately a good person who was dealt a shitty hand and encouraged to become a monster, not dissimilar from Karlach's situation. Both of those characters were never really given a choice in their shitty situations, but they did the best with the hand that was dealt to them. The Dark Urge is not like this. They were given a choice, and from what we can tell, they took every opportunity to relish in their barbarity. The browser-based prequel game created by Larian entitled Blood in Baldur's Gate acts as an introduction for the Dark Urge, and it's told like a horror story. The Dark Urge not only killed dozens of people over the span of a few days, but did it in sick and twisted ways, from impaling an elf on an anchor while he was still breathing, to murdering the main character of the game while his creepy butler Scleritus Fell taunted them and relished their impending doom. Speaking of, let's talk about Scleritus Fell for a second. I think his inclusion was not only an inspired idea for the Dark Urge storyline, but also a necessary one. The Urge is more than just the voice in your head. It is your very being, and the developers wisely realized that we needed a personification of that sinister voice that encourages us to kill, to maim, and bathe in the blood of the innocent, to be the monster we were born to be. But there's more to him than that. He claims to know us intimately, to have been with us from the beginning, ever our willing servant and our worshipper. But where exactly did he come from? Is he in fact an avatar of our father Baal, as is evidenced by the fact that Baal takes his form when speaking to us? Or is he simply a figment of our imagination, an external rationalization of our broken mind to come to terms with the horrid acts we commit, to have someone to blame? It's worth noting that aside from you and the investigator Tav from the prequel game, no one else seems to be able to see him or acknowledge his existence. Tav is often a nickname for the custom character that you can make, so that makes some sense. But the fact that none of your companions see Sceleritus Fel, nor are you able to really tell them about him, does speak volumes. Even Orin doesn't seem to acknowledge his presence. I don't feel this is an oversight on the developers' part. Hell, this is a game where they have backup NPCs for their backups, where content has been written for the 0.1% of players who will ever see it. This is intentional. So perhaps we are dealing with a Tyler Durden Fight Club situation, but the game is content to leave it somewhat ambiguous. While you have the option to blame Sceleritus for what is happening to you, the game makes it very clear you are responsible for your own actions. Sceleritus may be the bad influence pushing you towards the edge, but ultimately it is your choice of whether or not to jump.
I won't lay so much as a talon on her. I wouldn't rob you of that delight. Your clever mind is penning tragedy as we speak. Your repressed urge yearns to kill. And kill you will. Tonight, the moment you close your eyes, your favorite person will be brutalized.
The exact nature of Sceleritus' power over you, though, is unclear. He openly admits that he cannot force you into acts your urge does not already call you to do, but the clear authority with which he states that you will kill your lover brings up questions. Is he possessing you? Is he activating something in you, or merely setting off your urge from a suggestion? In such moments like the death of Alfira the innocent bard, or when you struggle not to kill your companion, it seems Sceleritus is most assuredly the catalyst, if nothing else. But it is your father, Bal, and his blood that ultimately control your body. Baldur's Gate is, at its core, a game about abuse, toxicity, and self-determination. None of the origin characters embody this more strongly than the Dark Urge. From the beginning, the Dark Urge has been encouraged by those around them to give in to their dark desires. They are told they cannot fight against their own nature, that some people are put on this earth to be monsters. Like Astarion, you are a creature born of evil and hatred, a beast that cannot be redeemed or given value, or so most would have you believe.
You know, I didn't realize you and I were so alike. I felt paralyzed to do anything about Cazador for so many decades. I gave up on myself. I gave up on any hope of escape after a few lashes. Bal controls you in much the same way. I don't know how you could beat him, but I do know this. You must try. The half-life of a mind-addled slave is worse than death. Don't become his. I wouldn't live another century as one for all the moonstones in Evereska.
But as Karlach says,
you are so much more than your parents. You're more than the affliction that wants to consume you. You are my friend. And you get to choose your destiny. Choose well, all right? Please.
And she's right. We often are told that there are certain things about us that are unchangeable, that we are who we are by the nature of the forces that conspired to create us. The Dark Urge can either confirm her argument or disprove it. Orin, by nature of her cruelty and ambition, sought to usurp us and replace us, and so she beat the memories out of our skull and made us into a thrall. She laughed as we became what she viewed as so much lesser, but what she didn't realize is she gave us a great gift. A second chance. A chance to make something else of ourselves away from the toxic influences of our so-called family. The Dark Urge storyline is a hard one that asks, can monsters ever truly be redeemed? It's a question people think they have an answer to, but rarely do. Too often we look at the monsters in our society, the villains, the murderers, and declare that they are evil to the core, that they were just born that way, and even if they were given a true chance at redemption, they could never claim it, nor would they be worthy of it. Make no mistake, the Dark Urge is one of those same monsters. They were all of that and more. They did some truly awful things, Heinous, despicable, unforgivable things. They tortured innocents, butchered mothers, fathers, and children, and even indulged in cannibalism. Hell, Scleritus even implies that we once indulged in necrophilia. And yet, Baldur's Gate argues that not only does such a person deserve a chance at redemption, but can even be worthy of saving the world. That's bold. That's almost insane. But there's an argument to be made that can you even say the Dark Urge is the same person they were before they lost their memories? Our memories form a fundamental basis of who we are. But Baldur's Gate seems to reject this excuse. Even looking at Shadowheart, she is a woman who has had her memory wiped so many times it's almost a miracle she's not a vegetable at this point. And yet both she and her parents come to the realization that while Shar may take her memories away from her, she as a person never truly changed. She remained that soft-hearted, sometimes dorky girl who had an inclination towards good and helping people despite Shar's best efforts to convince her into thinking otherwise. Shadowheart's evil path is essentially Shar dominating her and piloting her body, and even then she finds a sense of remorse at the things she's forced to do. She was never going to be a Sharan. Baldur's Gate seems to take a stance firmly on the side of nature rather than nurture, especially when it comes to the on-the-nose quest that sees you steal a Githyanki egg for the sole purpose of proving that argument. The Society of Brilliance wants to prove even Githyanki can be raised to be less violent than their nature suggests. 3 guesses as to how that goes for them. They all get killed by the newborn Githyanki. Accepting that a person's nature is not something they can ever truly change can seem like a cynical take. If we can't change our nature, then what's the point? This is where the Dark Urge storyline comes in. We may not be able to change our nature, but that does not mean our path and future is written for us. Each individual has within them the capacity for change and growth, but change must come from within. External forces will never and can never change you, no matter how hard they may try. Only you can fight against your own nature or embrace it. Others can influence the decisions you make or twist your own thinking into hallways of doubt and fear, but at the end of the day, they are as children screaming from the dusty rafters of your mind. At the end of the day, the actions you take, the ideals you choose to follow, and the roads you choose to travel are yours and yours alone. As the Dark Urge, it can sometimes be easier and somewhat gratifying to submit to your base nature. You get some pretty excellent rewards from doing so, after all. It's hard to be a good person, to fight against your own nature, family, and blood, to better yourself and others. It's hard to change, but doing so brings its own rewards, though they may not be material. You are rewarded with the love and appreciation of those whose lives you chose to better rather than extinguish, the support of a group of friends who want to see you be your best self, and perhaps most rewarding of all is the ability to look at yourself in a mirror and not see a monster staring back at you, to take pride in the person you have become. That is worth more than some stupid cloak and a grotesque form, though I will admit the Slayer form is kind of cool. The ending of the Dark Urge is maybe one of the most powerful moments in the game, more so than the true ending in my opinion. When presented with the opportunity to return to the fold, to stop fighting and embrace yourself, to continue living, you choose to reject Baal, knowing that even death would be more preferable than refusing to take your own path. To die, rather than submit to being controlled by someone who never cared about you, who only ever saw you as a pawn in their sick game. What could be more brave or powerful than that?
For the first time in over a century, silence falls over the Baal temple. No chants, no screams, no prayers. In the end, your own death brought you more joy than any you wrought on this land. You are slipping into peaceful oblivion. But your journey is not over.
The urge that drove thee to terrible acts, the spark of brutality that made thee his. But there is a new part of you that hath grown during thy travels. That part Baal could not extinguish, and so, instead of destroying thee,
He hath made thee anew.
I'd be worm food if it wasn't for you. Thank you.
The heart of a savior hath overshadowed the mind of a murderer. Today thou art born anew. Greet the bloodless dawn, child of man.
There's this idea in our modern culture, and especially in America, of punitive justice. It's an all too popular belief that villains are villains and crimes are never something to be forgiven. When we are wronged by someone, it is all too tempting and understandable to demand justice. And the form this justice takes is often in vindictive punishment, in trying to make sure the wrongdoer never has a good moment or peaceful thought in their life. They need to feel the pain they put you through. I understand that mentality, and I'm not here to tell you that you are wrong for thinking that way. But I don't know if continuing this way of thinking is helping our society in the long run. As can be evidenced from the Dark Urge storyline, change can only come from within, but can be nudged or encouraged by outside influences. If we continue to treat criminals as irredeemable and lock them into a horrible situation where such beliefs are violently reinforced, then that person is never given the opportunity to think otherwise about themselves. They are never given the catalyst to change, grow, or better themselves. In this way, our need for revenge and harsh punishments creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's why our criminal justice system so often takes petty or opportunistic criminals and turns them into hardened, lifetime ones. We humans can all too often fall into the trap of focusing on the effect of an action, the outcome, or the impact, while ignoring the circumstances that lead to such an outcome. Some people are evil, and some people take pleasure in the misery they pass on to others. But some criminals are not beyond redemption. People struggle every day in the quiet, solitary battle. The victim of abuse, the depressed and bullied kid, the person who society gave up on. It's hard to see monsters as human, but maybe that's what makes it so important. We're too quick to see the heart of a monster lurking inside the human. The cycle of violence continues every day because we as people are unwilling to see the humanity in those that wrong us. Am I saying you need to forgive criminals? That we should get rid of jails altogether? No, of course not. Forgiveness is a very personal thing, and I think the choice to not forgive someone and offering that same person a chance to improve the world they damaged are not necessarily mutually exclusive. As I said in my video on Stormblood, redemption does not equal forgiveness. But when such criminals pay their time and extend their voices outward to try and prevent such tragedies and mistakes as theirs from being repeated, I don't think we should dismiss them outright. If you disagree, then ask yourself how you would justify playing a Dark Urge character. The Dark Urge was one of the worst people to ever exist in either fiction or real life, yet we as players root for their struggle and redemption. Why? Because the story forces us to witness the truth of their struggle, to see past what heinous acts they committed in a different life and time. The story of a monster struggling against a nature that was never really their choice to begin with. We see the story of a person who was designed to be a weapon, refusing to accept their lineage. People are capable of change, and stories of the bitter struggle to overcome impossible odds are always powerful and inspiring. The heart of a savior can in fact overcome the mind of a murderer, and we in fact can find new ways to better punish wrongdoers. Not through punitive revenge, but by making the more difficult choice to extend a hand and offering them a better path forward, to see the heart of a human beating inside the monster.